Hello, YouTube. On this episode, we will be talking about the most disastrous celebrity ads, Skyscraper Live, and the pipeline from Australian soaps to Hollywood Boulevard.
This episode is brought to you by Octopus Energy.
Now, it is award season. Everyone is wondering who's going to clean up. And we tend to think awards are about that one big moment, like, oh my goodness, that one night, that speech, I can't believe I've won. But
the effort that goes into winning an award.
Everyone going for one of those big movie awards, it's not a coincidence that Academy members or whatever are saying, oh, did you see that thing? Yeah, I did. It was really good. There is a remorseless, many months campaign, and there are tens of people working on every single film's awards campaign.
I thought you were going to say tens of thousands.
No.
But there are tens.
Yeah, there are tens, but that's quite a lot when you think of like one, and it's a full-time job.
We mention this only because we are announcing our presenting partnership with the lovely people at Octopus Energy, who have just won the Which Recommended Provider of the Year for the 9th time in a row. And that is not something you get just by...
Which is hard to win.
Which is hard to
win. Which is hard to win.
But 9 in a row, I would say that makes Octopus Energy the Meryl Streep of the business.
Oh yeah, they're the Meryl. They're the absolute, they're the Meryl.
I call them Meryl Energy. That's what I call them. We'll start with a question from Lara Hope. Thank you, Lara. Is it expensive to dress a luxury set like Man vs. Baby, the Rowan Atkinson thing on Netflix, or is it more costly to create a vintage style thing like on Stranger Things?
Okay, right, Laura. This is like it's part of it's like how long is a piece of string. If your period thing that you're creating is just like some vintage radios or whatever, it's easier. But I think what's interesting about both of those things is that although they're kind of lovingly created, both of those things, as was Man versus Bee, are fully built sets, which we'll get to. And Stranger Things is all sets, and we'll get to the why of that and the cost of that. But I spoke for this question to Simon Bowles, who is an amazing production designer who's done such a variety of things and built so many different worlds. And actually right now, a film on which he was the production designer is in cinemas. It's called Primate. It's basically the Psycho Chimp horror movie, which is set in a beachfront house in Hawaii. If you haven't seen it, look at the trailer for it because it's kind of relevant to what we'll discuss, okay? He sent me pictures of all the models. By the way, his models are so beautiful. His set models are so beautiful. I would like to see a gallery of...
They're called maquettes, I think, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're tiny little versions of exactly... we used to have it whenever you'd get a TV set made, and they'd just show you this tiny... we'd always... Every single meeting would start with us going, first things first, I think it's too small.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see a gallery show of all his sets. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. If you look at the trailer of that film and you'll think, okay, they would have had to dress that house. No. That entire house is built in Elstree on a soundstage. It's like, and behind it, it's like, it's beachfront, but there's jungle behind it. And it's sort of 15 foot of real palms and stuff. And then it's a painted backdrop around the edge. So I guess part of what I'm saying, Laura, is what is really expensive is having a set rather than using locations. So why do we have sets? We have them for control, for maximum control. And also for something like TV, you're returning, you bring that set back out. You might store it, but you bring it back out. I'm not going to give away, if you haven't seen the last season of Stranger Things, various things happen in the kitchen of Mike's house. Now, I've seen that set before, and they would have stored that, and then it becomes something quite big happens in that kitchen. But it's a lovingly recreated 80s kitchen. But Simon, he does also do location work, so he was contrasting the two for me. And he said, when he did Pride, which I don't know if you've seen, which is about the miners' strike, they had one bedroom set, but the rest were locations. So they were real houses, 6 in Wales, some around it. They probably shot for half a day in those. And he described the process of turning up. You replace absolutely everything with 1980s stuff. You take down their wallpaper, you put other wallpaper up, you do the carpets, all the electrical fittings. And then before you do that, you itemize their real life room, and then you put it all back again when you wrap there. It is cheaper to hire those as locations and do all of that than it is to build them on a stage.
Must be cheaper.
Yeah. So that, and then to strike it after like 6 hours filming or whatever it is, you have the structure. So you're going into these houses anyway. But it's the same with things like stately homes or National Trust. I always thought it was amazing when Emerald Fennell said, I wanted a house that hadn't been used for salt burners. But Simon likes that particularly because he said, then you see the money going directly to people, communities, whoever. Yeah. And there's something about that with props as well. So for Man vs. Baby, that looks like a really expensive penthouse. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix.
Yes, I'm not sure I've seen it. So
this is Rowan.
So it's the Rowan Atkinson,
it's a sequel to the first one. Which is Rowan Atkinson, directed by the brilliant David Kerr, and it's the first one's Man versus Bee. He's house sitting a house, and there's a bee that he drives him mad. But they built, because so many things have to go wrong there, they built that as an entire set, a sort of luxury house. This, again, lots of things happen in this. He has to look after a baby.
Okay.
And
so chaos ensues.
Ensues.
And chaos cannot ensue if it's a private house that you're just renting for a couple of days.
You cannot, that level of chaos, it's better to do it on set. And also, as we say, you have total control. So in terms of things like, when you say an expensive set, I'm thinking you're like all the sort of sculptures, you can get stuff on like Wayfair that passes for expensive sculptures, so that's quite easy. Sometimes you need ancient typewriters and you find the one period exact one on eBay, and people spend a lot of time doing that. There's another movie which Simon did called Hyde Park on Hudson, and Bill Murray's Roosevelt, and they needed those teletyper machines. Now you cannot get that on eBay. So they go to museums, and then, the museums turn up and they put lots of them running, and they set them all up and they put them running in the background. Again, Simon loves that because the money goes directly into the museum.
The amazing Computer Science Museum in Cambridge is always, because they've got every single machine that's ever existed since the 60s. So they are every single show you ever see that's set in the 70s office or something like that. They provide everything for those. It's amazing. There's great museums like that all around the country.
Yes, again, so it as I say, to some extent it's how long's a piece of string, and normally the most expensive thing always is man hours, because it's how long, we're talking about how long it would take to build or create set, how long it takes to source those things, whether people need to come in, as with the teletyper machines, and run them for you, all of those things. So it's quite difficult to sort of put a exact kind of call the answer one way or another. But I will say that if you've ever seen sets like this, the level of detail is just beyond. And you will get a sense of that if you go to somewhere like Harry Potter World, and you look at the sheer detail in the background, that's in the deep background of scenes. And they had to build everything for that because it's kind of like astrolabes and things like that. But I always say that if I would love to have worked in production design. Yeah. I find it absolutely, the craft of it is so beautiful. And when you're on set and you see these worlds and you see the level and the depth of detail, that you're like, that is never even going to be in shot. And it is just, and Simon is like a master of it. I've loved to see all his things. And this is it. Anyway, have a look at the Primate trailer and realise it's all in Elstree.
Yes, I remember being given a tour of the Thursday Murder Club sets before filming started. It's an amazing production designer called James Merrifield who did this. And you went in. So the main bit of it is in a big stately home. The outside of it is a big stately home, and so he then recreated the inside of that stately home, including painting the huge walls of Shepperton, the exact views you would have seen from the windows of that stately home. But oh my God, the detail, the beautiful things that if I said, do you do private houses? Because you're amazing. He said, I'm quite busy. And just the carpenters working on it and the electricians just like making it look like just like real apartments. I mean, it was absolutely extraordinary.
And it's almost all MDF. And they just can make MDF, like in the Ministry of Magic in Harry Potter, where there's this kind of, it looks like these incredible sort of green, black glass bricks, and it's just all MDF.
I mean, and watching the scene painters, and it's just watching craftspeople at work is just an absolute joy. So as you say, it's lovely when you can use real houses because it puts money into the community. But when you watch someone actually make a set, making something out of nothing, it's absolutely extraordinary.
Oh, this really interests me and terrifies me about Skyscraper Live. Abby Crow says, I have a lot of questions about the legalities of Netflix's live stream of Alex Honnold climbing one of the world's tallest skyscrapers. How did Netflix get insurance for this? Would they be liable for corporate manslaughter if Alex died? What are the ethics of this?
Alex Honnold, who has previously made that documentary Free Solo, where he's climbing El Capitan. So he's one of the greatest free climbers in the world. So he's climbing up this enormous tower, with absolutely no safety equipment. So a lot of people are saying, well, what are the ethics of doing that? And Alex Honnold says himself, he said, look, I got paid by Netflix. He said, look, don't get paid like, a big sports star would, but I got paid by Netflix. I did not get paid to climb the building. He said, I was going to climb the building anyway. I got paid for the spectacle. I got paid for them being able to cover me climbing the building. So that's where Netflix is sort of, there's a legal loophole, which is essentially Alex is going to do this anyway. And he's shown that a million times before. He's always doing these challenges. So Netflix is just covering what he is doing. So he is insured for various types of things. They're on a 10-second delay, which is not insurance, but you know, there's a 10-second delay on the live stream. If Netflix had done something wrong, so Netflix, when they're putting that together, because they're filming him, Alex Honnold has to, you know, be cognizant of where the cameras are, and so if they do something wrong, if one of the drones falls out of the sky and hits him or something, or that their due diligence on weather is wrong, then Netflix are liable because that's their part in the proceedings. But everything apart from that is on Alex Honnold. He's saying, like, Netflix are not inducing me to climb this building. You know, this is the thing you do anyway. But Netflix knew I was doing it, so they say, we would love to cover this. And, it's, you know, they got, I think, 6.2 million people watching this live. So it was a big deal for him and a big deal for Netflix. If Netflix had gone to Alex Honnold and said, climb this building, we're in a very, very different place, and all sorts of things would have to be in place, and the insurance, it would all be on Netflix. But that is not what was happening there. Alex is doing it anyway, and Netflix is saying, we would love to film you doing that. In the same way that, you know, if someone is injured at a football match, you know, if a player is injured, match of the day doesn't get sued. You know, that's on the people putting on that event, and in this case it's Alex Honnold. So yeah, it feels like one of those things where you think, well, this is absolutely crazy, but the principle is he was doing this anyway. We are just pointing cameras at it. If something goes wrong with the cameras, if something goes wrong with the filming, that is on us. If something goes wrong with the climb, that is on Alex Honnold. But fortunately, nothing did go wrong with the climb, and it's an extraordinary sort of TV event. You know, like, do you remember in the 70s when Evel Knievel and Eddie Kidd were kind of jumping double-decker buses?
Yeah.
I was always trying to pitch like a new big stunt motorcyclist. That feels like there's a gap in the market for it, right? But you know, people climbing buildings, I guess it's the same thing. But
there are people who do things on YouTube and who do extreme sports on YouTube, and they do their own, and they've. I was actually, there are lots of people who do things like that, and you hope to get sponsors and you hope to get whatever, but they're sponsoring your clothes. Yeah. It's very carefully done. Because,
exactly. Like if Evel Knievel wants to jump the Grand Canyon, that is on him. We will happily sponsor his helmet, or film it from afar. We are not encouraging him.
Nothing to do with this.
Yeah, to jump the Grand Canyon. But I would have thought if someone wanted to jump the Grand Canyon, then that would be a good Netflix show. But what do I know? But yeah, it was. So Alex Honnold takes all of that responsibility. It was unbelievable. I mean, it's absolutely.
My tummy's going just thinking about it.
Yeah, I know, right? It's
crazy. I couldn't look. I'll have a look. I'll have a little look.
Yeah. I might
even though I know the ending. He survives.
Yeah, he's fine.
I find it quite hard to watch.
Yeah. Marina Robin has a question. Robin said, I've been wondering, why is it that many Australian soap stars have been successful in Hollywood when I can't think of anyone who's had a major role in a British soap that has ever cracked America? The obvious big success stories include Margot Robbie, Guy Pearce, Isla Fisher and various Hemsworths. Is it British snobbery that stops certain actors going into soaps? Is it that there are more options in the UK, so actors are more likely to stay here?
It's interesting. That's a good question, because obviously the pipeline is incredible from Australia. They have a great hit rate. And even people who just did little things, like everyone has been on one of those soaps, by the way. Like Russell Crowe's done a 4-episode arc. Heath Ledger, I think, had a few episodes on Home and Away. Anyway. Some of them have done both. Both the Hemsworths have done both Neighbours and Home and Away. Wow. By the way, we're all talking about those soaps. Soaps are often seen as stepping stones. I would say they teach you great things, soaps. They teach you stamina and professionalism and just being, one of those things. You've got to remember that there's a far, far smaller TV market in Australia. And so in a sense, they are always thinking about getting on a plane for the next level of their thing. And they might come here.
And also all Australian actors will have been on a soap before they make that move. It's not like I'm going on a soap. No, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to go to Hollywood, but in the few years I'm working in Australia, one of the things I would do is be on Neighbours or Home and Away.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's just a much smaller market, and you are always thinking that when you're making the jump, you are, and it's Hollywood, I guess, because it's obviously regarded as bigger and better. You're quite right that we have our own sort of ecosystem here, and we have a much bigger market. So there's lots more things that they can be involved with. I would also say that we have had some, like Ricky Whittle, who was in EastEnders, and he went and he was in, he's like the lead in American Gods. Sam Hugan, who was in River City, I want to say, that Scottish soap, and now is in Outlander, and it's like a huge, so there are people who've made it.
Colin Farrell was on Ballykiss Angel, which I know is not a soap.
Yeah, I don't feel that's a soap, so I can't. Yeah, but yes.
Yeah. Also, Colin Farrell, not British, but you know what I mean. That's a British TV show.
Yes. I would slightly say, this is maybe a slightly controversial thing, that there's something about those all Australian looks that even when they're playing a boy or a girl next door, they're really good looking. Yeah. And there's something about that kind of, that Margot Robbie, the Hemsworths, whatever. Like, you can be in Neighbours and look like that because we kind of think that that's what Australia's like. It's like, they're gorgeous surf chicks and gorgeous surfer guys. And they're kind of more already an idol, even though they might be kind of dowdied down and have a mullet like Guy Pearce used to on Neighbours or whatever. You can suddenly see them making a jump. Whereas we cast much more sort of, there's always a couple of heartthrobs on our soaps, but predominantly they are like authentic kind of people like you might actually know.
Yes, they're much more likely to be under the arches than surfing.
Yeah.
As soon as you see in Australia someone in a soap surfing,
you're like,
you could be in Hollywood.
Filmed in Palm Beach and, the Northern Beaches, and they look like Margot Robbie or whatever it is. Well, she was in Neighbours, but as soon as you see those people, you can slightly see, I can see you. I can see you transplanting, whatever. But as I say, we just have so many more things that our soap actors can go on into that. By the way, the dream, obviously, lots of people just dream of going to Hollywood because it's the biggest and best. But not that many do try and do it.
Yeah, if you think about who the most successful British soap actor has been in the last 20 years, probably Sarah Lancashire. But she can just do starring role after starring role after starring role on British TV and do these incredibly huge things and be massive and win every award going without really having to go to Hollywood. One good example would be Ben Hardy, who was Peter Beale in EastEnders, went on to do X-Men. He's in The Conjuring. He was Roger Taylor in Bohemian Rhapsody. But it's very, very rare.
Now, as trailed, Chloe Cohen's got a great question about ads detrimental to actors' career. She says, if I never see Jude Law again in that awful Uber Eats advert again, it will still be too much. The ad is viscerally upsetting. And reminds me that I don't especially like Jude Law on screen or off screen. My question is, has an advert been ever really detrimental to someone's career?
Wow, Chloe's not holding back, Chloe, is she?
No.
So if you haven't seen those, the Uber Eats campaign, he sort of, Jude Law is pursued through London by a sort of series of potential meet cute scenarios, but he wants to get out of them because all he wants to do is eat some barbecue chicken wings. And listen, Chloe, I know exactly what you mean. Jude Law, almost worse than doing the adverts is if you do an advert, the actors always have to like sort of do a little interview for it as well. They'll say this 2 days filming plus one press interview. And so I was thinking, I wonder what Jude Law has had to say about his Uber Eats campaign. And I found out, he said, it was great fun poking fun at myself in this way.
Oh, he loves poking fun at himself. Let me tell you about that.
Says Jude Law. We've all had moments where we have done enough for the day and just want to relax. That's where Uber Eats helps so much. They make it easy to enjoy your downtime. I can confirm that no one can make eating chicken wings with hot sauce all over your face look charming. Jude, of course, has not written that himself. And
we've read some adverts like that, let's be honest.
Yeah, but of course we have, and listen, I absolutely get it. And you do wonder sometimes why they do it, but occasionally an actor will have a bit of downtime or they'll think, you know what, I need a bit of family time. I'm going to take 3 or 4 months off. And then someone says, how about $500,000 for like a day's filming and a quote about
maybe there'll be some
sauce.
Prestige version of it at the Super Bowl.
Yes, exactly.
In which case.
Yeah, and because sometimes adverts can, absolutely be the making of you. And, if they're fun. But listen, lots and lots of actors do them. Yeah, that... Listen, doesn't reflect well on anyone, but I'm sure it paid well, and I'm sure that Uber Eats are delighted with it. Uma Thurman did a campaign for Schweppes about 15 years ago, where she's sort of on a kind of psychiatrist couch, and she's every time she says Schweppes, it's like she says sex, and it's like icky, and I don't think that did her any favors. But who remembers that now? There's the Kendall Jenner one in 2017, the Pepsi one,
Diet Woke.
Diet Woke.
Oh my God, that's epic. That's one of my
Yeah.
favourite adverts of all time. I think the premise of that is like Kendall Jenner somehow stops. There's a big protest, and I think Kendall Jenner averts a massive incident of police brutality by offering one of the officers a Pepsi.
She becomes at that point a memeified face of tone-deaf privilege, and this is, oh my God, this is a nightmare for Kendall Jenner. I think
Oh my
she's
God,
got
when
over
Martin
it.
Luther King's children are going on the record saying this is disgusting
Yeah.
about your Pepsi advert. That's not great. But as I say, it's a camp classic.
Yeah, and listen, she's still a billionaire, so she's done all right. In the 90s, did you remember John Cleese did those adverts for Sainsbury's where he's sort of barking through a megaphone and got very well paid, but that sort of certainly has harmed Sainsbury's for a bit, harmed him for a little bit, but again, everything's fine. So I think actors get it. I think it's difficult to see a career that's been genuinely derailed by an advert. I think maybe sometimes it makes you feel slightly less of somebody if they've done an advert, but it doesn't last for long. And that's the
less and less now, because people commerce is so plugged into what the idea of a creator is now.
Yeah, exactly.
That I think it's just becoming less and less of a thing that's a kind of sticking point for people, rightly or wrongly. But that's just the way it is, because people, particularly young people who spend so much time on YouTube, you're so used to
people doing adverts.
Everything is sort of an advert that you don't notice in the same way that people used to.
The whole plot of Lost of Translation is Bill Murray going out to Japan to do a whiskey advert because American actors would go and do Japanese adverts on the understanding they would never be seen in the UK, which, as you say, doesn't really work now because that amazing Tom Hiddleston ad for Centrum Vitamins but got shown everywhere. It's so awful. It hasn't harmed Tom Hiddleston's career at all. We will put in the show notes the amazing Phil Wang cut of that. Have you seen that?
Yes, it's so good. Yeah,
but just because you've asked the question, I know it's from a while ago, the Phil Wang thing, but it's so brilliant, him cutting himself into the into that Tom Hiddleston advert. So yeah, it's certainly ads can make you feel less good about certain people and certain celebrities for sure. Hard to find someone who's been completely derailed by an ad. But yeah, I would think that Kendall Jenner would be the closest, but she seems to have got over it. Oh, great.
Anthea Turner having the flake at her wedding with Grant Bovey. This is great, taking you all the way back to the late 90s, I think.
Yeah.
When they did on the front of OK Magazine, they were biting into the thing and it just went, that was like a complete viral storm before we knew what those things were, about the fact that she was promoting a new Cadbury's chocolate bar, which I think was called Snowflake.
I think it was the Snowflake, wasn't it? It was a white chocolate covered
flake. You can't
flake.
call the chocolate bar that now.
I know, can you
Again,
imagine?
we didn't know what those were either.
Yes.
But,
she was ahead of her time.
Yeah, and she was destroyed for that. And it's really, for like, the terrible commercialization of your wedding, even though everyone who sold their wedding was commercializing it. That genuinely derailed her career.
Do you think?
Yes, it did. It absolutely did. And she was just and it was the only person, whereas so many people were doing commercial activity really comparable. But for some reason, as we all know, like there's no rhyme or reason when the herd moves and it just decides that one person's going to be the pariah for this or that. And that was really what happened with that. So I think it took her a long time to come back, and she had to come back via things like Perfect Housewife and all those kind of
Celeb Big Brother.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, the converse of that is, when Alexander Armstrong did the Pimm's adverts, it's Pimm's o'clock. Genuinely, it was a huge thing. People loved it. People would shout at him in the street all the time. So, there's a reason why some people do adverts, which is actually they can be an incredibly good calling card for
O.J.
you.
Simpson sprinting in an advert for Hertz, sprinting across an air in the 70s. Yeah. Did so much of his great work in Chases, but leapt over some chairs and in the airport, and it was like, okay, right, now you've stopped being a football star and you've become an actor.
And I think the catchphrase was "Go OJ Go," and lots of people were holding those signs up when he was riding in that white Bronco. That was good for his career. Yeah. Less good for Hertz a number of years later.
Yeah.
I mean, John Lydon doing Country Butter, I kind of get it. But, the whole thing with John Lydon is he'll do what he wants to do. And, he had good reasons to want that money. And so, it's...
He exists in a place beyond success or failure now in that, I don't know, there's... That's not like someone who's at their TV peak and then or whatever. No.
I do wonder about Robbie Williams doing adverts for Felix cat food. That I've always wanted to. In fact, let's try and see if we can do a deep dive. If anyone has any background knowledge on the Robbie Williams doing a song for Felix cat food, that feels like a mismatch. Joseph Vaughan has a question for you, Marina. Will niche platforms like Crunchyroll for anime or PureFix for faith-based movies continue to survive and thrive outside of being owned by a big player? Or will they be swallowed up by the likes of Netflix?
Good question, Joseph. Those platforms, we know that like Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus are all acquiring things and rushing to further consolidate and have even further scale. Crunchyroll is anime, and but it is actually owned by Sony, so that it's already part of a sort of major media conglomerate. But it's allowed to sort of exist within it, as quite a sort of self-contained thing. PureFlix, faith-based. I don't know why we always say faith-based. We only mean one faith. Christian. The Christian things. PureFlix is owned by Great American Media and Sony. So lots of these people could divest and go somewhere else, but they aren't now. What is interesting that's happening at the moment, and this is really quite a current thing, is that they're forming kind of these small players. Obviously, can see how difficult it is amongst all this M&A activity. They're forming collectives, and actually, PureFlix and Crunchyroll are part of. They've become part of something called Beyond Mainstream. And this is actually an interesting thing. And they're trying to form alliances and sort of collectively bargain and be a more powerful voice banded together. And I think, they want to stay independent, these people. It's interesting, you see people who just want to be acquired. These people want to stay independent. And actually, the best thing in their favour is, and what we know about them is, that they have incredibly engaged fan bases, and unlike the churn, Netflix doesn't have that much churn in subscribers, but lots of the other services do. You become a member to watch certain things that you're obsessed with, or everyone's talking about, and then you quickly cancel for the next month or whatever it is. But they don't have this because they have the faith-based sort of niche streamers or platforms or whatever have very, very engaged fans, and so do the anime things. So I think it's more likely you'll see, once they've formed into these alliances, that they collectively bargain and become part of bundling deals and other sorts of alliances. They'll have separate alliances for all the faith-based ones may go together, and lots of sort of anime and other content like that may go together. But what they really benefit from is these incredibly engaged and loyal fan bases who stay with them. So I don't think you should just assume that they're all going to be sucked up by somebody, because actually they might not. And interesting things may continue to happen in those spaces.
And also, some fan bases take against large corporations buying their sort of pet organisation as well. Not always. But
if you don't need it and you can band together because you actually can rely on a fan base, lots of things can be done. So I think that to some degree that I would think that they're quite sort of safe. But as I say, in some cases they're partly owned or they sit under kind of big entertainment company umbrellas already. Okay, we said that Gary Lineker on our Tuesday episode never decides anything that goes to the podcast. Immediately, I'm going to sort of undermine that, because we've got a question from a Mr. Gary Lineker that I'm going to ask you. It's about the Traitors. He's on the pulse. Gary says, do contestants on Traitors get paid just to appear? How much do they get paid?
It's interesting that you wonder if Gary is interested in popular culture, or whether someone has just put in a call to him to be on Celebrity Traitors. He's like, how much? What are they getting paid to do that? Thank you.
He's talking about the civilians.
He is talking about the civilians. Thank you, Gary, for your question. They do not get paid. There we go. That was easy, wasn't it? No, they don't get paid on that. I think, I know, because they're playing for a prize, and actually it doesn't take a huge amount of time out of your year to be on Traitors. No. Sort of, unlike some reality shows, they do pay people. It's unpaid because they're playing for a prize. They'll get per diems for food and all that kind of stuff, and obviously they're put up and all that sort of stuff. But
they've got a lovely lasagna laid on. You don't have to give them any money for the food.
We see them get breakfast, for heaven's sake. It's that one is unpaid, but obviously unless you win, in which case it is very much paid. But thank you for your question, Mr. Lineker. Micah Richards, if you've got anything to ask, you know the address.
Members, we will see you tomorrow for a bonus episode on Hollywood's most sinful couples.
Valentine's Day special.
Otherwise, we will see everyone next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.